Welcome back to NSTV's celebration of World Art Day. Very excited for my next guest, Josephine Mairzadeh. She is a community member, she worked for local government, and she's also wears a different hat as an artist. So I'm so excited to finally introduce you. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you with us.
Thank you, Erica. It's really a pleasure being here and having the opportunity to talk about the other side of me that's outside of local government and being on the board of the Great Neck Library.
Oh, that's great. So it's interesting because I've known you wearing your local government hat, but I didn't know that you were an artist. So why don't you tell me a little bit about it? Like, how did it start? Were you just born an artist? Did you learn in school? Like, tell me a little bit about it.
Absolutely. Ultimately speaking, we're all multidimensional beings and we're multifaceted. My interest in art really sprung from an interaction between my mother and my nursery school teacher. One day, my nursery school teacher had approached my mom and said, you know, Josephine exudes talent in artwork that seems to be exemplary in relation to her other classmates. I think this is something you should really look into and maybe have her take additional art classes. And
so like, you were better at noodle necklaces, or?
That's a great question. I question that even today. I'm not even sure what that was, but I'm just assuming it had to do with just drawing.
Sure, like the way you're holding your pencil, you know, all the things.
The basics.
They can see, for sure. So, so that was really early on.
Yeah.
Really early on. And then from there, what happened? Did you take classes, or?
So I took a number of classes. I was involved in various competitions. And that led me to have my first exhibition when I was 11.
How impressive is that? So what did you do? What kind of work did you have? Was it drawings or paintings, or what did you exhibit?
So I had a collection of pieces with various types of work, drawing, painting, sculpture, and so forth.
Oh, wow. So what is it now that you focus on? Do you have one medium that you enjoy the most?
I don't have a real focus as far as the type of materials I use. I'm now drawn to mixed media, where I mixed my artwork with photography and graphic design mainly.
Oh, so that's computer? I mean, did you go to school for that? Did you take classes on that? Or was it something you messed around with?
Yeah, I took classes, graphic design classes and so forth.
Yeah, we were talking earlier and you were saying that not only did you want to create artwork, but you want to learn the history of it. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was always drawn to the meaning behind the work. And over a period of time, I recognized the fact that if I'm going to be creating something, it should have value, not only to myself, but to other people. And for me, history and my personal identity were always things that were important topics that I wanted to be able to articulate through the means of visualization and not necessarily through words. And so over time, I recognized the fact that I am someone who comes from a background where my parents are immigrants who came from Iran to the United States. And I wanted to not only learn about the history of what Iranian culture was and what their heritage meant to me, but the artwork that flourished in the country of my ancestors. And so that actually led me to various apprenticeships, locally here at the Nassau County Museum of Art,
right.
As well as in Manhattan, where I had the opportunity to work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Islamic Art Department, as well as their Watson Library, which inevitably led me to my role at the Great Neck Library Board of Trustees.
Okay. So what is it that you discovered? Is there anything specific you discovered about the artwork from Iran, like that stood out to you, that you loved?
Absolutely. The artistry and the craftsmanship really is a genre that is very different. Middle Eastern art at large has specific patterns of designs that are mimicked through many of the representations of artwork. For example, the use of flowers and fruits and imagery and the portrayal of these images through art are designed in specific fashions. For example, Iranian art is mostly noted for a form of work called miniatures. And what's fascinating about this type of artwork is that you have these very small, refined pieces that are made using hairline brush strokes to create these very detailed and intricate works of art.
Oh, that's really interesting. Have you ever tried to do that yourself?
So I don't have the skill set, unfortunately, to do that, but I've been able to mimic that type of work through my graphic arts, which you'll see soon.
Now, I mean, I could only imagine the patience it takes to do something like that too, right? Little tiny brushstrokes and little tiny.
Oh, I know I definitely don't have the patience for that, or maybe even the eyesight.
Right. Right, you know that I need my glasses. For sure, I wouldn't be able to see that. So you were, I mean, before I go a little bit further, I just wanted to talk about parallels, because you had found a parallel between, you know, art history and your background. Why is it important, or why was it so important for you to learn about your family's history and where they came from? Like, why was it important for you to make that connection between the artwork that you did, your work in your life, and this family history? Like, where did that come from?
So growing up as a child, I knew my parents came to America to seek refuge after the Iranian Revolution. And for me, it was really hard to understand why someone would leave absolutely everything behind and come to America. And there was this, you know, there was always this bittersweet sentiment in my household that they'd one day go back to their ancestral home, but that never came to fruition. So I wanted to understand who I am, where I came from, what my cultural roots are. And in the process of learning about these things, whether historically or anecdotally, I recognize that I'm a generational bridge, and I'm personally responsible for preserving this cultural heritage that my family once had in Iran and bringing it to life in America for the following generations.
And I think that that goes for a lot of people, right? That they're first generation American and they're trying to figure out, you know, the history and how could somebody leave everything that they had, you know, to come here? What was the significance? And you do feel a responsibility.
100%.
Yeah, there's a full responsibility
Without
to keep that coming. So, and you show some of it in your art, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about something which is pretty cool, is that you were commissioned by Mayor Bloomberg's office to do a piece. Like, what? That's so cool. Can you tell us a little about how that like came about, what you did? Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, someone had heard about my artwork and they had reached out to me, and they wanted to create a commission recognizing Iranians in New York City. And so I basically thought to myself, what's the best representation of doing that? And I thought to myself, well, the one unifying element that brings Iranians of all faiths together, whether Iranian Jews, Iranian Christians, Iranian Baha'is, Iranian Muslims, and so forth, is one holiday, and that is the Persian New Year called Nowruz, which actually signifies a new day, renewal, beginning.
Okay, and what was the name of that piece that you did?
The piece was called 5 Generations of Reflection into the New Year, and it's one of 2 pieces. So one version is called The Matriarchs, which focuses on the role of women.
I think we have it right here.
Oh, yeah. Which focuses on the role of women and their responsibility for passing down tradition and culture from one generation to the next.
Well, tell us about what we're seeing here. Tell us about this painting.
So on the Persian New Year, it's important for every family to put out a ceremonial enclave of various items that both signify renewal and growth. And these items include apples, they include water element, fish, eggs, and there's always an important holy book or for secular families, a book of Hafez, which is a book of poetry that is included in this enclave of items. And for me, I'm telling the story of my ancestors here in this piece. And if you look in the mirror, there's a photograph of my great-great-grandmother. And in the reflection of the fishbowl, you'll see a reflection of my great-grandmother. And in the eggs, you'll see an image of my mother that is to the right of the fishbowl, that is looking onto a reflection of myself in one of the eggs. And in the furthest egg to the right is a reflection of my grandmother, who's the last living generation, who's looking in the direction of her grandmother. And so in the background, you see images of a group of people who are sitting in rows. And those faces are actually superimposed images. The original images were pictures of Nasser-ad-Din Shah's wives. And the reason why I superimposed images of my family members was because I wanted to recognize the importance that behind any leader is their mother and the role that they have in the household.
Wow. There's a lot happening. It's pretty deep. It's pretty amazing. Now, there's a second image that goes along with this as well, right?
Correct.
I want you to tell us a little bit about this now.
So this piece is Esther's legacy. Queen Esther was notable as the individual who saved the Jews of Iran. And in the image of the mirror, instead of seeing an image of my great-great-grandmother, you see the doorway to her tomb. Because if it wasn't for her, the Iranian Jewish community wouldn't be able to prosper and ultimately make its way into America. And so this piece is really seen as a tribute to Iranian Jewry here in America, whereas the other piece is a tribute to my family and my family tree through imagery.
Wow. And so where was this piece shown, these pieces shown?
So it was shown at an exhibition called Light and Shadows, The Jews in Iran, at Bet Hatfutsot, the Museum of Jewish People in Israel. And from there, it traveled to UCLA's Fowler Museum, and then traveled again to Yeshiva University's museum located at the Center for Jewish History.
Wow, I mean, that's pretty amazing. Really amazing. I mean, you must have been super excited, feeling proud. What did your family think of this piece?
I mean, my family obviously is very supportive of the things that I do, but I think more importantly, it was a tribute to their legacy and what is ultimately my inherited legacy.
That's exactly right. So they must have, felt super, not only proud, but honored almost that you would do that for them. I know my family would. So let's talk about some of your other work. So this we're looking at right now is titled Dressed as a Persian Rug, right? Tell us about it. What did you do? This looks like digital media as well. Explain it.
Yeah, absolutely. So dressed as a Persian rug is actually a French expression that people use when someone dresses up very ornately to express themselves. And it's, the nature of ornate artwork really stems in what is Persian art. So you see a ton of, images in a small space. And it's something very obvious in Iranian rugs and tile work and various types of craftsmanship. So as you can see, I've taken elements of what essentially is Iranian art and put it on to the surface of a rug. Most Persian rugs are designed so that they have a medallion in the center of the rug, which further exemplifies its beauty. This piece, when you look at it closely, you'll see that there are photographs of myself where I am putting on makeup and removing it, and putting on a headscarf and removing it, and it's almost as if there's this, element of movement that's created, and there isn't stability. And what I try to exemplify in this piece is the fact that I am a first-generation Iranian American, and being first generation, it's very difficult to acculturate between what societal expectations of women are and having to live in a Western society. And as you're aware, a rug is something that's placed on the floor, and it possesses beauty. However, it possesses little significance. And a rug is walked on.
You walk on it, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you're cleaning a rug, you actually have to beat the rug to get all the dust out. That's the traditional way of cleaning a rug. And in Iran, rugs were actually also placed on walls. So there's also a beautifying element to it. However, the historical reasoning behind that was that the tapestries or the rugs on the wall were meant to keep the room warm.
Right.
It was a means of insulation for the space. And so I also designed this so that it could be put on a wall. And what do we have on walls that control the light in a room? You have a light switch.
Oh, yes.
So this is also meant to be like a light switch. However, the light switch is missing the actual switch on the inside of it to exemplify a lack of direction between these very different and multifaceted parts of my identity that I'm trying to bring into one space.
Wow. How old were you when you did this?
This was a piece from maybe 15 years ago or so.
So looking at this now, how do you feel? Like, do you feel different than the person who created it? Do you feel like you're in a obviously you're in a different space, but can you still relate to the person who created this?
That's a great question. I don't know if you've experienced this before, but there's always this small voice in the back of your head that's never changed since you were a child. And I don't think it's ever going to change, but over a period of time, that little voice matures. In artwork, you always see a little piece of yourself in anything that you create. It's much like the relationship of the creator and the child. It sounds egotistical, but it's not. It's your product, it's your vision. It's, the voice that you're trying to articulate, not through words, but through imagery instead.
Mm-hmm. So we have one last piece that I'd like to talk about, if you don't mind. And this is called Four Seasons, but there's another name for it that I can't pronounce.
Char Fasl, which essentially means four seasons in Farsi.
So this is an interesting piece. Can you tell us a little bit about it? I see that you're also using photography in this piece as well, as you did in the other two.
So you're right, there is photography, and the connection is that those are pictures of myself that are torn. We're all humans, and we're all evolving, and we're all changing. And in order to be able to figure out who we are, we sometimes have to be able to sift the flowers from the weeds. And that also pertains to figuring out your identity. Who are you? What defines you? And the questions I've always had is, how Iranian am I? How American am I? How can I, live in a world that's a hybrid of these two very unique and important identities? Many people like to say that we live in a melting pot, but other people like to say that, we're really living in a salad bowl. And so I have to figure out what these things are for myself. And instead of having an intellectual conversation, thinking things out or articulating them through words, I am using my personal imagery to figure out what my path is and where I'm going to go and how I can bring my identity under one tree. And so with this piece, you can see that there's a tree and it's growing, and the color of the leaves are black and white, but they're composed of images of myself that have been torn. Moving along the piece, you'll see that there are parts of my face that are slowly becoming defined through chalk and the green nature of the background where the tree is emerging through the piece. And when the leaves fall and the seasons change, symbolic of the changes in my life, there's this beautiful tree that has grown where its old leaves have shed, and I'm basically identifying with the new person that I am, that has, taken away the elements that don't belong to me and the ones that do belong to me in one place.
I feel like that's the epitome of what all kids and teenagers go through growing up. You have to try to figure out who you are and lose the pieces that you don't want, that don't make you happy, that make you feel ugly, until you find this person that you really are.
Absolutely. And it's not rejecting my cultural identity at all. It's actually recognizing it, but also it's balancing what parts of it I want to keep and what parts of it need to evolve ultimately.
So, have you found peace or harmony between your two identities, between, your homeland, as some would say, and America, or are you still searching for that balance and feeling too responsible for that bridge? That's a lot of weight.
I think that's a balancing act that everyone deals with, not just myself. It's, as you mentioned, it's something very human and relatable. Is it something that I have an answer for you now? No, I don't. I feel equally responsible for being American. I'm exceptionally proud to be in a space where, I can express myself. So my cultural identity is very important to me. It's almost as if you have two arms and you can't operate without another arm.
Understood. So what do you, or if you have anything going on now in art? Are you still creating art? Do you have plans to pick it up again? What do you see for the future of you with your art pieces?
Obviously, it's something that's a part of me. It's an extension of who I am. COVID hasn't made it friendly for anyone, but hopefully, since this pandemic is over, I can now take steps toward that direction.
Well, I know that the audience will be, and I'm super excited to see what you have going forward. So I can't thank you enough for coming here and sharing not only your artwork, but the story behind it. It's really important. And as I said, I think that people could really relate to you and your work. So appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. What I said, I think, is a universal way of thinking and experiencing the world. Ultimately speaking, we're all humans, we're all people, and we all have the same shared experiences, but everything is viewed through different lenses.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you again.